Sabrina didn't know that while she was at the airport wiping tears from her ex-boyfriend's face, I was standing on an awards stage, thanking an empty seat. Later, she told me she was wrong, said I was the only person she had ever loved, but I understood one truth when I was 7 years old. Never give the same person a second chance to hurt you. Chapter 1. I stood backstage at the Golden Architecture Awards ceremony, dialing that number for the 10th time. The number you have dialed is temporarily unavailable. Please try again later. The time on my phone screen changed to 1947, 13 minutes before I had to go on stage to accept my award. 3 days ago, Sabrina had been curled up in my arms, tracing circles on my chest with her finger as she tilted her face up at me and said, "Caleb, how could I possibly miss the most important moment of your life? I already picked out the dress I'm going to wear that day." When she said it, her eyes sparkled like shattered stars. I believed her. I thought she was different from everyone else. My phone vibrated once. A WeChat message from Sabrina. "Caleb, something urgent suddenly came up on my side, so I might be a little late. Don't be mad. Okay, I'll definitely make it before the award presentation." Below the message was a location pin. Capital International Airport. Airport. Her ex-boyfriend Isaac returned to the country at 3 this afternoon. I stared at that location for a long time. So long that my assistant beside me quietly reminded me, "Mr. Caleb, it's time to get ready backstage." I locked my phone screen and slipped it into the inner pocket of my suit jacket. Over my heart, separated only by the fabric, came another faint vibration. Another message. I didn't look at it. The winter when I was 7 years old. The snow in Beijing fell heavily. My mother held my hand as we stood at the airport arrivals gate. She wore a red wool coat, her lipstick painted bright and vivid, like she was about to attend some grand romantic date. And she really was waiting for one. My father, Ambrose, had been away on a 3-month business trip. He was returning today. We waited at the arrivals gate for 4 hours. My mother went from standing to leaning against the railing, then from leaning to squatting on the floor. Her hand gripped my wrist tightly the entire time, so tightly my bones hurt. "Mom, it hurts." She didn't hear me. Her eyes were locked onto every man walking out of the exit, like someone dying and searching desperately for one last breath of oxygen. The flight's arrival time passed. Then another 2 hours passed. Finally, my mother loosened her grip and pulled out her phone to make a call. The line connected. "Where are you?" Her voice trembled. I don't know what the person on the other side said. I only remember my mother's makeup suddenly running down her face. Her tears washed the eyeliner into 2 black streaks that streamed down her cheeks. "What do you mean? I'm not coming back. What do you mean? I found true love. Ambrose, your son is still here. Your fucking son is still here." She screamed a lot of things after that. Her voice became sharper and more hysterical with every sentence. Everyone around us was staring. Their gazes pierced into me like needles. My mother hung up the phone and crouched down in front of me. Her heavily made-up face came close to mine, carrying the overpowering scent of cosmetics. She said, "Son, your father abandoned us. He found another woman. He doesn't want us anymore." I didn't know what to say. I was 7 years old that year. But some truths carve themselves into your bones from that very moment onward. Never believe anyone who says, "I'll come back." And never give the same person a second chance to hurt you. Later, my mother spent 3 years proving that truth correct. She gave my father a second chance. The spring he came back claiming he had changed his mind. She opened the door for him again, cooked a full table of dishes again, and put on that red coat again. Then 3 months later, my father disappeared once more. This time, he took every last cent of our savings with him. My mother didn't cry. She simply walked quietly into the bathroom, quietly locked the door, and quietly slit her wrists. I was 10 years old that year. When I came home from school and pushed the door open, the bathtub water was overflowing onto the floor. It was pale red. That scene became a nightmare that haunted me for the rest of my life. It also became the source of all my paranoia, suspicion, and inability to forgive in the long years that followed. My father came looking for me years later. He said he was old now, said he wanted to make amends. I told him, "You have a new family and new children. The way you treated my mother back then is the same way you'll treat them. That's your nature." His face flushed red as he cursed me for being unfilial and cold-blooded. I didn't argue back. I only thought to myself, "You're right. I am cold-blooded." The part of that 7-year-old boy that was still warm, still willing to trust people, it had already gone cold in that bathtub of pale red water. Chapter 2. I met Sabrina 3 years ago at a design exhibition. She was wearing a white dress, standing in front of my work for a very long time. So long that I eventually walked over and asked her what she was looking at. She turned around with tears in her eyes and said, "This house design feels so lonely." I froze for a moment. That piece was called Shell. It was my university graduation project, a house without windows, with only one door, and 3 locks on the inside of it. No one had ever described it as lonely. The judges said it was oppressive. My professor said it was too dark. My classmates said they couldn't understand it. Only Sabrina said it was lonely. In that instant, it felt like someone had gently brushed away the dust that had been gathering for 21 years in some forgotten corner of my heart. After we got together, Sabrina would always ask me, "Why do you love me?" I would say, "Because you're light." She would laugh and throw herself into my arms, saying I was the best sweet talker she had ever met. But she didn't know I was telling the truth. She was light. During the days I spent with her, for the first time in my life, I felt that maybe this world wasn't made only of darkness and betrayal. Maybe being loved and trusted was possible. She would cook noodles for me at 2 in the morning just because I casually said, "I'm a little hungry." She remembered every schedule and important date I had, sending me encouraging messages at every milestone. When I came home late after working overtime, she would pretend to be asleep, then secretly stretch her hand out from under the blanket to hold mine. She even showed me the chat history on her phone and said, "See, I'm completely professional when talking to male clients." She deleted every flirty message she received from other men and said, "I don't want you feeling unhappy about anything." She did so many things. Little by little, she pulled me out of that snowy night when I was 7 years old. I started believing that maybe people really were different from one another. Maybe when some people say, "I'll come back," they truly will. Maybe when some people say, "I love you," they can actually love you for a lifetime. 3 days ago, lying in my arms, she said, "Caleb, how could I possibly miss the most important moment of your life?" And I believed her. She asked me whether I mentioned her in my acceptance speech. I said, "I did." Excited, she kicked the blanket around and said, "What did you say? Come on, give me a rehearsal first." I pulled her closer, resting my chin on top of her head. Secret, actually. My acceptance speech was very simple. Thank you to my girlfriend, Sabrina. She made me believe that there is someone in this world worth opening those 3 locks for. I never told her. I wanted her to hear it from the audience. I wanted to see the surprise on her face, see her tear up, see her proudly tell the person sitting next to her, "That man on stage is my boyfriend." I wanted to dedicate that moment to her. Thinking about it now, what a cruel irony. Chapter 3. At exactly 8 o'clock that night, the awards ceremony officially began. I sat in the front row on the left side. The seat beside me was empty. It was a reserved seat prepared by the organizers for the family member of the award recipient. A pink sticky note had been placed on the chair in advance by the staff. Printed on it were the words, "MS Sabrina." I rubbed the edge of the sticky note with my fingers, feeling the slightly rough paper beneath my fingertips. On my phone, Sabrina's messages still stopped at that pinned location. "Caleb, something urgent suddenly came up on my side, so I might be a little late. Don't be mad." "Okay, I'll definitely make it before the award presentation." I never replied, because I didn't know what to say. Should I ask her, "What were you doing at the airport?" Should I ask, "Was your ex-boyfriend more important than my awards ceremony?" Or should I ask, "Why did you lie to me? Was your so-called emergency just picking Isaac up from the airport?" Those questions rolled through my throat countless times before I swallowed every single one of them back down. Suddenly, I felt exhausted, not physically tired. It was a weariness rising slowly from the deepest part of my soul. For 21 years, I thought I had escaped that snowy night, escaped that pale red bathroom. But when my fingers dialed another unanswered call for the 3rd time, when my eyes drifted toward that empty seat for the 15th time, the winter from when I was 7 years old buried me all over again. The host's voice echoed through the speakers. "Next, let us welcome the winner of this year's Golden Architecture Award for Best Architectural Design, Caleb." The spotlight landed on me. Applause erupted. I stood up, buttoned my suit jacket, and walked toward the stage. The heat from the lights burned against my skin as the stairs rose one step at a time beneath my feet. The moment I stepped onto the awards stage, I instinctively looked into the audience. The seat with my girlfriend's name on it was still empty. The lights were too bright for me to see the other faces in the crowd clearly. But that empty chair looked as though it had been deliberately singled out by the spotlight itself, stabbing sharply into my vision. I stood in front of the microphone and accepted the trophy from the presenter. The metal felt cold in my hands, heavy enough to drag at my palm. The audience quieted down. Everyone waited for me to speak. I opened my mouth. The speech I had prepared for 2 weeks, all the words about Sabrina, got stuck in my throat. It felt as though someone had stuffed cotton into my chest, every breath carrying a dull ache. I stayed silent for a long time. So long that the confusion in the audience began to spread. So long that the host was already preparing to smooth things over. Finally, I spoke. "Thank you to the committee for this recognition. Thank you to my team. And thank you to everything that once made me believe." I never mentioned Sabrina's name. All those words about light, about the 3 locks, about someone worth opening them for. I swallowed every one of them back down. She wasn't worth it anymore. She made all of it meaningless. After the ceremony ended, I went down to the underground parking garage to get my car. My phone vibrated again. A message from Sabrina. Caleb, I'm here. Where are you? Traffic was terrible just now, and I couldn't get through to your phone. Below that were 7 or 8 screenshots of outgoing call logs. It wasn't that the calls didn't connect. I just hadn't answered. She probably didn't know that over the past 2 hours, I had set my phone to silent mode and watched her calls light up my screen one after another, then disappear one after another. It wasn't that I didn't want to answer. I just didn't want to hear another explanation. I had already heard enough explanations when I was 7 years old. I was only away on business a little longer than expected. That woman meant nothing. It was just for fun. The only people I love are you and our son. Every sentence sounded sincere. Every lie sounded flawless. And then what happened? Then my mother died in a bathtub. Chapter 4. I started the car and drove out of the underground parking garage. The early autumn night in Beijing already carried a trace of chill. I rolled down the window and let the cold wind pour into the car. My phone vibrated again. Sabrina, Caleb, please don't ignore me. I really know I was wrong. Just tell me where you are and I'll come find you. One hand on the steering wheel. I sent her a reply. Go home. I'm fine. We'll talk tomorrow. After sending it, I muted her chat notifications. I didn't go home. I drove aimlessly around the ring roads, circling from the second ring to the third, from the third to the fourth. An old song played on the radio. Lazy and slow. I couldn't hear the lyrics clearly. When I passed Sanlitun, I saw a girl standing by the roadside talking on the phone. She wore a white dress and had her hair tied in a high ponytail. She looked like she was waiting for someone, standing on tiptoe as she searched the opposite side of the road. I pulled the car over and lit my first cigarette of the night. Smoke slowly filled the interior, blurring the silhouette of the girl outside the windshield. Suddenly, I remembered something Sabrina asked me last month. Do you have any boundaries nobody's allowed to cross? Yes, I answered. Betrayal and lies. At the time, she laughed playfully and said, don't worry, I would never betray you in this lifetime. What about lying? She thought about it for a moment and asked, do white lies count? I said, no, but I need you to understand something. In my dictionary, there's no such thing as a white lie. A lie is a lie. She stuck out her tongue at me and said, you're so strict. I never told her what that sentence really meant, because I didn't want her to know how my mother died. I didn't want her to know about the tears I saw at the airport when I was 7, or the pale red water I saw in the bathroom when I was 10. I didn't want to use the shadows of my childhood to chain down her freedom. I wanted her to live freely and happily, but there was one condition. She had to understand where my boundaries were, and now she understood, by crushing them beneath her feet. That night, I never went home. I sat in the car until 3 in the morning, then drove to the company office. There was a folding camp bed in my office, left over from the days when I used to work through the night. Lying there, staring at the ceiling in the darkness, I suddenly felt ridiculous. All my life, I thought I was just that little boy terrified of being abandoned. I believed that if I became good enough, successful enough, I would never have to relive the winter from when I was 7 years old. But Sabrina taught me one thing. Being excellent is useless. Even loving someone is useless. The people who are meant to leave, will still leave. Chapter 5. My phone lit up again. Another message from Sabrina. I unlocked it and glanced at the screen. 3:28 a.m. Sabrina, Caleb, are you asleep? I can't sleep. Sabrina, I know you're angry. I should have told you beforehand. But Isaac suddenly contacted me and said he had something really important to talk about. I didn't want you overthinking things, so I went first and planned to make it back before the awards ceremony. Sabrina, I really thought there was enough time. Sabrina, please don't ignore me. Okay, I'm scared. I stared at those 4 messages. The typing box lit up, then dimmed, then lit up again. In the end, I replied with only one sentence. Let's meet tomorrow. Sabrina replied instantly. Okay. Where? What time? I didn't answer. After turning off my phone, I closed my eyes in the darkness. Sabrina had never voluntarily told me much about Isaac. I had only pieced together fragments here and there from conversations she had with her friends. He was her first love. 3 years ago, he went abroad, and when he left, the breakup between them had been ugly. Now Isaac was back in the country, and he contacted her. She said, I thought there was enough time. Enough time for what? Enough time to pick him up, then rush back to my awards ceremony. Enough time to meet her ex-boyfriend, then return to playing the role of my gentle, considerate girlfriend. Enough time to maintain balance between 2 men. Maybe she really believed she could. Maybe in her eyes, this was only a small scheduling mistake, not some unforgivable betrayal. But she didn't understand. To me, a scheduling mistake is betrayal, and betrayal means the end. There is no second chance, not because I don't love her enough, but precisely because I love her too much, so much that I refuse to let myself become my mother. The woman who waited at the airport for 4 hours. The woman who opened the door again to welcome her husband home. The woman who slit her wrists in a bathtub. I cannot become her, and I cannot let anyone else become her either. Chapter 6. The next afternoon, I waited for her at a cafe in Wangjing. When Sabrina pushed the door open and walked in, I noticed she was wearing makeup, but it couldn't hide the dark circles beneath her eyes. She probably hadn't slept well last night either. She sat down across from me and hurriedly began. Caleb, listen to my explanation. You don't need to explain. My voice was calmer than I expected. She froze for a second, and her eyes immediately started reddening. You won't even listen to me explain. You went to the airport yesterday. Yes. To pick up Isaac. Yes. But he was just. You chose him. The moment those words left my mouth, tears streamed down her face. No, that's not true. I didn't choose him. I just thought that since he had finally come back to the country, there were things left unresolved between us, and I wanted to end things properly face to face. She reached across the table to grab my hand. Her fingertips icy cold. Caleb, you're the only person I love. Isaac is just part of the past. Really, believe me. I didn't pull my hand away, but I didn't hold hers back either. I simply looked at her quietly, carefully. Her tears were real. Her panic was real. Even the sincerity in her voice at this very moment was real. But so what? Back when my father came back to find my mother, he probably looked exactly the same. Slowly, finger by finger, I withdrew my hand from hers. Sabrina, I said, let's break up. Her eyes widened instantly. Tears flooded down her face as her voice trembled. What did you say? I said, we're over. Just because I didn't make it to the awards ceremony on time. I already explained, it was traffic. It wasn't traffic. I interrupted her, my tone still unbelievably calm. So calm that even I found it strange. You weren't late because of traffic. You were late because you went to the airport. You went to the airport because Isaac contacted you. After promising to attend my awards ceremony, you chose to see your ex-boyfriend instead. I looked straight at her and asked, word by word, Sabrina, if the situation were reversed, if I went to see my ex-girlfriend on the most important day of your life, what would you think? She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her sweet face was covered in tears. Even crying, she was still beautiful, like a flower drenched in rain, but my heart no longer softened. You know what this award meant to me, I said. This was the most important breakthrough of my career, an opportunity earned through countless sleepless nights and unimaginable effort. Because of my award, the company secured 3 major brand partnerships and a government project. My boss approved company shares for me on the spot. The team expanded. Resources were redirected toward us, and all she had to do was sit in the audience as my partner. I wasn't asking her to sacrifice anything. I only asked her to be there. She promised me she would, and then she forgot. No, not forgot. She believed she could balance both sides, believed she could manage the timing between me and Isaac without disappointing either of us. But she didn't understand. That very attempt to not disappoint either side was the greatest disappointment she could have given me, because the moment she made that choice, I was never her only priority. I was simply someone who could be adjusted, someone who could be postponed, someone who could be told to wait a little longer. She struggled to speak. I just didn't think it was this serious. You didn't think it was serious. I let out a small laugh and took a sip of the coffee in front of me. Cold, bitter. Sabrina, you don't think it's serious, but I do. I put the cup down, looked at her, and finished my final sentence. This is where we end. Caleb. Her sobs echoed through the quiet cafe, drawing glances from the surrounding customers, but she seemed beyond caring. She clutched the edge of the table so hard her knuckles turned white. You said you loved me. You said you would always trust me. Why won't you even give me one chance? I looked into her eyes and suddenly felt deeply sad, because she still had no idea what those words were trampling on. Chapter 7. I gave you chances. I said it quietly. I gave you countless chances. The first time was 6 months after we started dating. You logged into Weibo on my computer and forgot to sign out. I accidentally saw your search history. Every few days, there was one repeated search. Isaac, not his real name, his username. Clearski. You searched for him constantly, more often than you searched for me. I closed the page and pretended I hadn't seen it. The second time was the day you changed phones. Your old phone data was transferred onto my computer as a backup. A hidden folder popped up in the photo album. There were only 3 pictures inside, photos of you and Isaac together. The pictures were taken 2 years ago, but they had been saved again just last month. You never voluntarily showed me what you looked like before we met. But those photos, you saved them twice. I closed the folder and pretended I hadn't seen it. The third time was on the night of our first anniversary. You were on the balcony making a phone call. I walked a little closer while cutting fruit. You had your back to me, and your voice was soft. He treated me really well. Sometimes I still think about the past. Forget it. Let's not talk about this anymore. When you hung up and turned around, You froze after seeing me there. Then you smiled and said you were talking to your best friend. I said, okay. I pretended I hadn't heard anything. On the morning of the awards ceremony, I saw your chat with Isaac pop up. He said, you'll come, right? I want to see you. You didn't refuse. You replied with one word, By the time I finished speaking, all the color had drained from Sabrina's face. Why, you knew all along. I knew. Then why didn't you say anything sooner? Why? Because I was gambling. I cut her off. Still calm. I was gambling on whether you would make the choice yourself. I was gambling that at the very last moment, you would remember our promise. Remember what you promised me. She cried so hard she could barely breathe. I did remember. I really did. I kept checking the time the whole time. But you still went to the airport. I stood up and looked down at her. Sabrina, the moment you opened the navigation route to the airport, you had already made your choice. Everything that happened afterward was just the price of that choice. She cried too hard to speak. Her whole face was buried in her hands, shoulders shaking violently. I reached into my briefcase and placed something on the table, the key to her apartment. I already had the movers return your things. I took mine away. I'm giving your key back. The moment I turned to leave, Sabrina rushed up from behind and wrapped her arms tightly around my waist. Don't go, please. Caleb, don't leave me. I'll change. I swear I'll change. I'll never see Isaac again. I'll block him. I'll never. I peeled her hands away from me, one finger at a time, just like 10 minutes ago, when I slowly withdrew my own hand from hers. Sabrina, I never turned around. When I was 7 years old, I waited 4 hours for my father at an airport. Her crying suddenly faltered. When I was 10, my mother died in a bathtub. Her sobbing gradually quieted, leaving only uneven breathing behind me. My father cheated 3 times, and every single time, my mother forgave him. The last time, she slit her wrists open with a knife. I removed the last of her fingers from my body. It's not that I don't love you, it's that I can't. After saying that, I pushed open the cafe door and walked out into the sunlight beyond it. Chapter 8. The cafe door closed behind me, cutting off all the sound of her crying. I didn't know how long she would cry, but there was one thing I knew for certain. I would never, ever give her a second chance. Not because I was heartless, but because I understood too well that some things only exist as 0 times or countless times. Today, she could stand me up for Isaac. Tomorrow, she could betray my trust for someone else. It's not that I don't trust her, I just don't trust human nature. The least reliable thing in this world is people's confidence in themselves. The people who say, it's only this once, or I promise it'll never happen again, usually don't even realize they'll repeat the same mistake, because deep down, they don't think what they did was that serious. Sabrina didn't think it was serious, so she would never truly change. And I never wanted to relive that snowy night when I was 7. Never wanted to see that bathtub of pale red water again. Never wanted to become my mother, shattered a second time by promises from the same person. The first week after the breakup, I changed my phone number. I deleted every social media account. New WeChat account. Only company co-workers added. No Moments posts at all. Sabrina found my assistant and cried on the phone for 2 straight hours. My assistant cautiously came to ask what I wanted him to do. I said, you don't need to pass her calls to me anymore. Very quickly, everyone in the company found out we had broken up. Some co-workers who didn't know the details congratulated me on winning the award and casually asked why my girlfriend hadn't attended the celebration dinner. I only smiled without answering. The people who knew the truth silently stopped bringing her up. During that period, I buried myself in work like a madman. After winning the award, projects had already been scheduled through the middle of next year. Every day, I arrived at the office first and left last. Meetings until my throat went hoarse. Design drafts until my hands trembled. Even my assistant couldn't stand watching anymore. Mr. Caleb, maybe you should take a vacation. No need, because the moment I stopped, I would think of her smile, think of the way she curled up in my arms, tracing circles against my chest, think of the noodles she cooked for me at 2 in the morning, and then I would start wondering, was any of it real? Those bowls of noodles in the middle of the night, those encouraging messages, those deleted flirty texts from other men, those promises she swore over and over again. The moment she opened the navigation route to the airport, what did any of those things become? I had no answer, and I no longer intended to search for one. During the second week after the breakup, Sabrina found my apartment. Yes, I had moved. I moved the very next day after the awards ceremony. While Sabrina was still crying on the phone trying to reach me, I had already packed my luggage overnight and contacted a real estate agent. She didn't know my new address, but she managed to find out the address of my new company office. Chapter 9. That night, I worked overtime until 10:30. When I walked out of the office building, I saw her standing beneath a streetlight. Beijing in October was already freezing at night. She wore only a thin trench coat, her lips purple from the cold. The moment she saw me, Her eyes lit up instantly. That expression made a dull ache spread through my chest. Not because I felt sorry for her, but because I felt sorry for the version of myself that still wanted to believe in a look like that. Caleb. She jogged toward me, carrying a thermal container in her hands. When she opened it, I saw dumplings she had wrapped herself. They weren't very pretty. You could tell she had spent a lot of effort making them. Do you remember when we first got together? She asked softly. You told me you'd never really celebrated the winter solstice properly before, because by then your mom was already gone. This year, as she spoke, she began crying again. Tears fell one by one into the container. This year, let me spend the winter solstice with you. Okay. I looked at the dumplings, looked at her reddened eyes, looked at her trembling hands, frozen by the cold, and then I said something that sounded heartless even to myself. Sabrina, the winter solstice is still 2 months away. Her movements froze. Tears hung on her eyelashes. You want to use 1 box of dumplings to ask me to wait 60 days for you, but that day, you weren't even willing to wait 4 hours for me. After saying that, I walked around her and headed toward the underground parking garage. Caleb. She chased after me, her voice torn apart by the night wind. What do I have to do for you to forgive me? Tell me, I'll do it. I never turned around. The moment I stepped into the parking garage, I heard a muffled sound behind me. I glanced back. She was kneeling on the ground. The concrete at the entrance of the garage was hard and freezing cold. Her knees pressed against it while the hem of her trench coat spread around her like the broken wings of a bird. I'm begging you, please, just give me 1 chance. Her voice was so hoarse it barely sounded like her anymore. The girl I once held so carefully in my hands, terrified of hurting her, the girl I once treasured so much I feared she would melt away, was now kneeling in the freezing wind of late October, begging me to forgive her. I stopped walking, silent for a very long time. Then I walked back toward her. She lifted her head, and hope flickered back into her eyes. I took off my suit jacket and draped it over her shoulders. Go home. Straightening up, I turned and walked toward the garage again. It's cold outside. Behind me, her sobbing disappeared into the night wind. I never looked back. That suit jacket was the last thing I owned that still had anything to do with her. Inside its inner pocket, there had once been a ring. I had planned to take it out during the celebration dinner after the awards ceremony. Now that ring was lying somewhere deep inside a trash bin near Workers' Stadium, together with the roses from that day, long since carried away by a garbage truck. Chapter 10. Later. The whole incident was posted online by one of Sabrina's friends. The post didn't mention names. It only said, my friend got dumped just because she stood her boyfriend up one time. She even knelt down begging him, and he still wouldn't forgive her. Isn't that way too heartless? The post got thousands of comments. When my assistant showed it to me, his expression was extremely cautious, like he was holding a ticking bomb. I scrolled through a few replies. The top comment said, this guy is way too cold-hearted. He wouldn't even give her 1 chance. Hundreds of replies followed underneath. Exactly. Total jerk. She's better off without him. I calmly locked my phone and handed it back to my assistant. Book me a flight abroad. Next week. The sooner the better. My assistant froze for a moment. Business trip? Vacation. That evening after work, I ran into a woman from the neighboring department in the elevator. She had just come back from the gym downstairs, her hair still damp. Seeing me, she smiled. Mr. Caleb, there's a girl waiting for you downstairs. She's been standing there for a really long time. Looks like she's been crying. Thank you, I said. I'll take the back exit. As I walked out through the rear door, I suddenly thought of my mother. Back when my father left for the 3rd time, had she waited for him like this too? Had she stood downstairs the same way, standing there until the sky turned dark, until the streetlights came on? She must have had countless chances to leave, after the first betrayal, after the second, but she chose to forgive him a 3rd time, and then the 4th chance never came. She killed herself first. The day before I left the country, I received a package. No sender information. Inside was a journal. It was thick, filled with entries dating back 3 years. Every page had photos of us pasted inside, along with handwritten notes from her. Our first movie together, our first kiss, our first fight, the first time we made up afterward, the way my eyebrows furrowed when I got angry, the way my eyelashes drooped when I fell asleep, the grain of rice stuck at the corner of my mouth after eating her cooking. She recorded all of it, every single thing. The final page had been written 3 days before the awards ceremony. The day after tomorrow is Caleb's big day. He's been so busy lately that he comes home and falls asleep immediately every night. Today I secretly measured his ring size. After the awards ceremony ends, I'm going to surprise him too. Tucked beneath the page was a sticky note. On it was a single sentence. Caleb, will you marry me? At the back of the journal was a letter. I recognized her handwriting immediately, but I never opened it. I placed the journal and the letter together into a drawer and locked it. While packing my luggage, I sent my assistant a message. While I'm abroad, If Sabrina asks about me, tell her you don't know anything. My assistant replied with, understood. Then he added, Mr. Caleb, are you really not going to give her another chance? I stared at the screen for a long time, typed something, deleted it, typed again, deleted again. In the end, I sent only one sentence. When something breaks, you can glue it back together, but the cracks will always remain. I don't want to spend the rest of my life staring at those cracks. After sending the message, I turned off my phone and zipped up my suitcase. Outside the window, the lights of Beijing were beginning to glow. The city was still as beautiful as ever, but within this city, there was no longer anyone I wanted to see. Chapter 11. Sabrina tried to find me many times afterward, through mutual friends, through coworkers, through bits and pieces of news that reached my ears long after the fact. One of her close friends once called me. She said Sabrina had developed mild depression, that she threw up everything she ate, that she couldn't paint or create anything anymore. She said Sabrina reread that journal over and over again, crying so hard each time she could barely breathe. She said Sabrina deleted every way of contacting Isaac, even turning down a collaboration with that gallery because of him. She said the greatest regret of Sabrina's life was going to the airport that day. After listening, I stayed silent for a long time. Then I said, please tell her I hope she recovers soon. Her friend became emotional. Caleb, she still loves you. She's suffering so much right now, don't you feel even a little heartbroken? Heartbroken? I was. The girl whose lips turned purple under the streetlight from the cold. The girl kneeling on the concrete begging me. The girl lying awake night after night unable to sleep. I felt heartbroken for all of them. But I felt even more heartbroken for 7-year-old Caleb. Even more for 10-year-old Caleb, pushing open the bathroom door after coming home from school. Even more for the Caleb who spent 18 years learning how to trust people again. Whoever felt heartbroken for him. Let me tell you a story. That day, for once, I didn't hang up immediately. When I was 7, I waited 4 hours for my father at an airport. He never came back. When I was 10, my father returned once, and my mother forgave him. 3 months later he left again, and my mother slit her wrists. Silence fell on the other end of the phone. The lesson of this story isn't that I'm pitiful. The lesson is this: never believe someone who has betrayed you will change. My father never changed. If Isaac contacts Sabrina again someday, she'll still go. Maybe it won't be Isaac. Maybe it'll be another man. Maybe it'll be work, or a friend, or something else she thinks is important. She'll always have a reason, and she'll never truly believe she did anything wrong. And I paused. My fingers tightened around the phone until my knuckles turned white. I don't want to live like a joke. After hanging up, I stood beside the window for a long time. The city's night view was beautiful. Thousands of lights glowed across countless windows, each shining with warm yellow light. Behind every window, someone was waiting for somebody to come home. I used to be one of them, but now, my window was dark, and no one would ever wait for me to come home again. As I closed the curtains, a sentence suddenly came to mind. True departures never come with goodbyes. All dramatic farewells are just tests. A real departure happens on an ordinary sunny afternoon. Someone puts on their usual coat, walks out the door, and never comes back. That was how my father left, and that was how I left too. In the end, we still became the same kind of person. The only difference was, he betrayed a promise, and I betrayed love. Chapter 12. Several years later, I gave a presentation at an architecture forum. The topic was architecture and psychological healing. Halfway through the talk, someone in the audience raised a hand and asked, Mr. Caleb, you said architecture can heal the human heart. Then what do you think architecture cannot heal? Standing on stage, I thought seriously for a moment. Then I answered, regret. The moment that word left my mouth, I suddenly thought of Sabrina. I remembered the first time we met, the way she stood in front of my work, then turned around and smiled at me. There had been tears in her eyes, but she still smiled and said, this house feels so lonely. At that moment, I thought she understood me. Only later did I realize that she merely saw the loneliness. She never truly understood where that loneliness came from. She didn't know that the reason the house had no windows was because the person living inside it was afraid of seeing the outside world. She didn't know the reason the house had 3 locks was because the person living there had once opened the door, let in a promise full of passionate vows, and then watched that promise explode into shattered pieces inside the house. She didn't know those 3 locks were never meant to keep other people out. They existed to lock the person inside, to stop him from ever stepping outside again. Once, I opened those 3 locks for her, and then, with one broken promise, she made me seal them shut again. This time, I threw away the key. Epilogue. After the forum ended, the organizers asked me to leave a message in the guest book. I picked up the pen, hesitated for a very long time, then I wrote one sentence. Never give the same person a second chance to hurt you. I didn't invent that sentence. It was something my mother said to me when I was 7 years old. Back then, at the airport arrivals gate, After waiting 4 hours while holding my hand, she crouched down and said her final words to me. Son, never give the same person a second chance to hurt you. At the time, I didn't understand. Now I do. But I also know Sabrina never will. Even now, she probably still believes I left her because of that awards ceremony, because she was late that one time. She doesn't understand that what she shattered was never just a date or an appointment. What she shattered was the trust and spent 18 years learning how to rebuild. The lights at the awards ceremony were too bright. The shadow cast by that empty seat. She will never understand how long it was. I put down the pen, closed the guest book, and turned to leave the venue. Outside, the sunlight was warm against my skin. I suddenly thought of the psychological rehabilitation center I had once designed. I remembered the sentence I wrote in the project description. This building has no dark rooms. Every space leads towards sunlight. I succeeded, at least on the blueprint. As for when that sunlight will finally reach the dark corner inside my heart, maybe it will take another 18 years. Maybe it will take a lifetime, but that's okay. Life is still long. I can wait.